For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to thefullmountmma.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley.
Because I couldn't live with that decision. It was like, going back to that interview, it was a hard decision for me to make. And that decision has haunted me for the last 15 months. And I figured I couldn't live like that for the rest of my life. I'm a big believer in living out your dreams and facing your fears and just facing the reality of, I don't want to be sitting 20 years from now saying, you know what, son, you should have went and did that. And here I am. And on the biggest stage of them all, I was on UFC 100, so why not be on UFC 200?
And there he is in his own words, Brock Lesnar, on why he will be returning at UFC 200. The announcement made at UFC 199. Sean Stanley, Brian Coyle back with you. It is the TFM Live podcast sponsored by thefullmountmma.com. And Brian, I guess your thoughts a little bit of when you first heard the announcement.
Again, this was something I could not believe. Looking at my Twitter timeline a couple hours before UFC 199 started, thanks to the reporting of Ariel Helwani, Brock Lesnar's back, dude. I don't care if I sound like a 10-year-old kid here. This is awesome. This is one of the best possible things that could have happened to UFC 200. Because Lesnar, of course, being bigger than he's the biggest draw that the WWE has. He was the biggest draw previous to Conor McGregor for the UFC. And now he's back out of nowhere. Basically a surprise, the equivalent of a wrestling surprise return. He's fighting on UFC 200, and he isn't fighting just any fight. He's in the co-main event. He's fighting Mark Hunt, who is the antithesis of a fighter that Lesnar would like to fight, given the fact that Hunt just takes his fist and shoves it into people's faces and absolutely destroys people. And all of a sudden, we've got a co-main event for UFC 200 that has skyrocketed this thing to new limits. And this came out of nowhere. There was no hint of Lesnar being back in the UFC. He signed a contract with WWE prior to WrestleMania 31 last year. He was on SportsCenter and effectively told Hannah Storm, I'm retired from the UFC. You get paid a lot of good money from Vince McMahon to come out and beat people up, and I'm doing that. But all of a sudden, here he comes out of nowhere. He's on SportsCenter on Monday, and Brock Lesnar announces, I'm back. I feel great. I'm fighting Mark Hunt at UFC 200, and it's just a glorious thing. It's an absolute fantastic thing. What are your thoughts, Sean?
No, I mean, I just, my thought was, I was like, all right, let's see who they have them fight, because you're not putting them in there with somebody that's going to make them, I just think my thought was, okay, which slugger is going to get their shot at them?
Yeah.
Because you're not throwing them in there with, your submission specialist. That's not his forte, They especially to me, this is a one-off thing. This is going to give Lesnar his chance to go out the way he wanted to go out. His body, he says, feels good. And what I thought was interesting, and this is, I'm going to play this clip right here, and it was on who called who to set this up. All right, so here's this.
This is very simple. This was me sitting having a cup of coffee at my farm in Canada and thinking I'd waking up every morning and feeling this feeling of, was that the right decision? Was that the right decision?
He's the one that made this call. And were you able to watch any of the interview, or did you watch all the interview?
I pretty much watched everything that I saw the ESPN interview. I saw the Paul Heyman interview, which is really weird considering the fact they made no references to World Wrestling Entertainment when Heyman and Lesnar are both under contract with WWE. As you mentioned, it's scheduled to be a one-off fight, but Lesnar kind of was very non-committal.
Yeah, no. He said I think if it goes good or he feels like it, he's dominant or something in this fight, it may be more than that. But to me right now, I feel like this is going in as a one-off fight. Do I think he's preparing for it to be a one-off fight? No, because if he does, I think you're preparing to lose because you're fighting a very dangerous opponent.
Absolutely. And just some things on this. Lesnar will be the first ever fighter to appear on UFC 100 and 200 on the main cards. John Jones and Jim Miller are on the 200 card as well. Obviously, John Jones headlining, Jim Miller fighting Takanori Gomi, but both were on the prelim card for UFC 100. Lesnar, we last saw him, of course, in 2011, losing to Alistair Overeem via first-round TKO. He had diverticulitis that really took away...
now, he had a high grade of diverticulitis, not because there's different, which I didn't know or wasn't aware of, but there's different one because I had a friend that actually had diverticulitis.
This thing with Lesnar, he's not fighting Frank Mir, which I found, like, when they were trying to speculate who the opponent would be, Frank Mir popped immediately into mind because Mir obviously beat him in his debut.
Oh, isn't that the perfect UFC mixture?
Yeah.
Mir 1-1, Lesnar 1-1. Oh my goodness. Just a rubber match.
Let's do a rubber match. He beat Shane Carwin, who mysteriously appeared on the UFC website prior to this announcement, in the fighter list, which led to speculation that he's fighting Carwin, who's been retired for a while. And
I think that was just a bunch of people trying to go for a payday.
It's like, I'll fight Brock Lesnar. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's the funny thing with Lesnar, and we see this there are so many directions we can go, and we did a 3 and out that you can find on the FullMountMMA.com talking about whether this is a legit start of a run for Lesnar. I basically fantasy booked his way to a title. I think Mark Hunt beats him, but there is a scenario in which Lesnar could end up actually being in a spot to fight for a title probably next year if he wants to.
Wow.
There are the way the UFC's giving out title shots and the way heavyweight is, especially, I could see him beating Hunt and then all of a sudden beating somebody else. And
I can see him getting a shot before Overeem.
I mean, Overeem's literally got the shot.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but again, you say that jokingly, but it's never too crazy.
Somebody will get hurt before that fight happens.
Who knows? It's in Cleveland, and supposedly the Cavs are winning right now. So maybe
that is 100% right. I totally forgot. You know what? No, that was my fault. I wasn't even trying to be funny. I totally forgot. Miocic won the belt.
It goes to show how much of an impact
UFC Cleveland. I already wiped that off the map. I'm like, Cleveland, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, people still haven't when you go through all these graphics on TV shows, including ones I've worked on. There's no acknowledgement of Stipe Miocic bringing a title back to Cleveland yet, so you wouldn't be the first person to do that. But it opens up a whole can of worms here between the relationship between WWE and the UFC, and I think that's an interesting topic to kind of do a deep dive into.
Can I tell you rumors I've heard and from pretty okay sources, and I think you've probably seen some of them on online, but I believe they might have gotten a 2-for-1 deal on this.
Oh, a 2-for-1. See, I know where you're going with this, and we're just diving into this Lesnar news because honestly, it's bigger than this was the crazy thing to me before we get into 2 possible people that may end up on the WWE side as a loner, if you will. Are you more excited for this fight, given now it's Jones and Cormier, which I think is a better title fight, a better headliner than McGregor-Diaz was, just from a fight perspective, and with Lesnar and Mark Hunt co-main eventing, is that duo of fight, that pair of fights, better than McGregor-Diaz as a draw?
I think Lesnar as a draw is just as good as I think him and McGregor will cross out.
I think so too,
and I think that's part of the. I won't say that's part of it, but I believe that's part of what this is about. To say, hey, look, McGregor, you're not the only one.
Yeah, this is because, I mean, Lesnar was granted a USADA exemption today by the UFC.
Well, because he wouldn't have had the opportunity to actually do the full thing anyways, correct? I mean,
exactly.
That's how I read it anyways. I don't know if that's just the way they tried to make it seem so or whatever, but...
There's two ways of looking at this. You can read the full article I have on the fullmetalmma.com about Lesnar. Basically, USADA and the UFC, when a fighter comes into the organization, they have to have 4 months of out-of-competition drug tests before they can fight. With the exception, there's a clause in there that the UFC can grant a special exemption to any fighter they see fit that either cannot physically make that 4-month requirement because they came in for a special occasion or a special attraction fight or whatever, or they can just do whatever the hell they want, which was basically the skeptic look at that fight, because the UFC is contracted to USADA. Remember, they have USADA do all the drug testing. It's not USADA holds reign over the UFC when it comes to this stuff. So basically, Lesnar, because, 3 months ago, he may have called Dana White, but he wouldn't have been able to fight on 200 if this period wasn't waived. So he immediately enters the USADA drug testing program. He was actually supposedly, according to Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports, drug tested today. So Lesnar now all of a sudden can be randomly drug tested at any time until his retirement. So basically, there was no, unlike other athletes coming in, Lesnar was not tested out of competition as long as other guys. But he's still being subject to testing. He still will undergo all of these crazy drug tests that the fighters are complaining about. People showing up at 6 a.m. at their gyms or at their homes or whatever. So he's still being tested, but that 4-month testing period was kind of fiddled with because the UFC can do whatever they want in that scenario.
Can I change the topic for one moment?
Surely.
Because I just got something from Bleacher Report that says Dan Henderson reportedly wants another shot at Michael Bisping.
He wants another shot at Michael Bisping? Yep. Or he's getting another shot at Michael?
He wants another shot at Bisping. Remember, Henderson KO'd Bisping at UFC 100.
Hey, I can...
Could this really happen? Could we get Henderson as the champion?
Here is my answer to this question. I will never put past anything by the UFC, but it's like the Seinfeld episode with the reservation. Anybody can just ask for reservations or take reservations, but you have to hold it. You have to get it. And Dan Anderson can ask for anything he wants, but he's not going to get a title shot.
No, but didn't you say the same thing about Bisping?
Well, no, Bisping, I thought he needed one more fight against Jacare or against Weidman or whoever it was to get the title shot.
I think the way UFC books, he'll get the shot because they'll give him a shot where it'll be, you win, you get the belt, you lose, you're done.
That's
right out into the sunset.
Oh man, that would be absolutely insane. That would be peak MMA at its finest.
That's all right. I didn't mean to curtail your Lesnar talk here, but that
my Lesnar soliloquy.
That just comes across as we're talking. I'm like, wait a minute, we're talking about Henderson probably, going out the best way possible. If this is true, this might be the best way possible as a champion.
Dan Henderson's asking for title shots. J.R. Smith is having a good night in the NBA Finals. What?
It's a full moon, buddy.
Is going on, man? I don't get it. Brock Lesnar is in the
and
UFC
now back to our originally scheduled Brock Lesnar talk. I'm sorry.
But here's the deal. Dan, this is how absurd our sport is, and this is why I love it so much. And as a fairly new face to being this hardcore MMA analyst and fan, Brock Lesnar coming out of nowhere, it's like, okay, now we're here. This is the situation. He's fighting Mark Hunt in the dream fight that I never knew that I wanted, but I absolutely want it to happen. And I am so excited because you get a professional face puncher in Mark Hunt, and you get an NCAA heavyweight champion in Lesnar. It's the ultimate ground versus stand-up matchup.
Yeah, but he didn't fare too well against the last one.
Lesnar's got a weak chin, which is insane for one of the most intimidating human beings on the face of this earth.
Yeah, but we say weak chin, but remember, he got hit like with a triple combo from Alistair Overeem.
I know that.
And Overeem's got what, like a size 22 fist?
Probably.
We're like, weak chin. Not many people that's been hit by Overeem is really...
That's the thing. Relatively speaking, he has a weak chin, and Lesnar doesn't like getting hit in the face. It's just the way he fights. And I joked on Twitter, and friend of the show Alex Dono retweeted me on this one. He doesn't even like getting hit by scripted punches in the face. So it's just one of those things that Lesnar gets really mad when people punch him in the face. I mean, nobody likes getting punched in the face, but Brock Lesnar hates it more than anybody in this world.
He hates it more than a lot of others.